Great to have you here. And we were just talking, and we thought, you know what? Let's record because we're talking
We
about good
forgot to hit
stuff.
the record button.
So we were talking about April
Good to
last
be here.
year, Supplier, your company. Well, I'll leave it with you. That's when it kind of kicked off.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Let's just carry on. We've been talking for 20 minutes, folks, already. So,
Yeah.
um, I spent 25 years working in supply chain, working predominantly in the enterprise space, advising companies on how to drive value out of their relationships rather than the
Mm.
contracts.
Yeah, that's a good
Um,
distinction for sure. We'll probably touch on that.
there's a real distinction in terms of the savings and value that you can derive
Yeah.
from those areas as well. Um, I mean, look, we've always been up against it, trying to drive value out of the relationships because they've always been kind of intangible.
Yeah.
You know, kind of like trying to nail the proverbial jelly to a wall because there's no structure. It's all kind of subjective relationship led behaviors. I'd work with these organizations and I'd spend quite a lot of time in spreadsheets and PowerPoints because there was no tech to do this thing. So I'd spend a lot of time playing with formulas, trying to create these funky formulas that would emulate behavior, kind of subjective behavior, to turn them into something objective that we could then measure. And that was always the trick, you know, and making it aesthetically pleasing. This is where the PowerPoint
That's
stuff comes.
key. That's so
It
key,
is
I find. It's
100% key,
yeah.
100%, but wasn't always a thing, not because it wasn't, you know, it's quite a dry area. Um, the procurement of old was very kind of binary procurement, and
Yeah.
you were selling the virtues of relationship management into the procurement space. And procurement itself has gone through loads of change, especially in the last 18 months, which
Yeah.
we're
Definitely.
specifically talking about now. So a lot of the companies that I work for, they really like what I produce for them, and they say, "Well, can we have it?" You know, I'm start naming companies now. I mean, you'll know who they all are. That long story short, that prompted me to shrink wrap what I developed into software.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because there's definitely a market for it. I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, just before going into the Supplico, the birth of Supplico, just prior to that, just to set the scene, you've always had chief procurement officers working, or head of vendor management, or whatever, working with their procurement teams, and they would say to the procurement teams, "Show me what our supply chain is doing. Show me what our suppliers are doing," because there was always the view of the supply chain of suppliers has gone through some change as well. You know, now it's all about collaborative relationship building and value, because before it was all about the numbers, and let's get another 10%, etc., etc. And that was very common. You'd have CPOs, and they say to their team, show me what our suppliers are doing, and the procurement teams would show these contracts, and they'd say, well, here's the contract. It's a pre-baked, predefined, pre-negotiated 10 to 15% the
Yeah.
margin, and that was great because you know you can take that hard-coded margin, if you like, and drop it into your capital book, and then you can run projects against it. It's addressable spend. And then the CPO would say, well, what about this relationship, this SRM stuff that you've been presenting? And the procurement team would say, well, that's about maturing our relationships. It's strategic, it's long term. And although it was a nice to have, it was just that, because the CPOs needed to work with stuff that they could then use. And SRM was always a bit more of a concept. And just to kind of set that against what we know of supply chain, which is essentially supply chains operated as it's been all about the numbers, you know, lowest cost supplier, just-in-time purchasing. For the last 30 years, it's all been about the numbers, which is why when you look at the technology has addressed that market. So it's all
Yes.
been about spend and compliance. And then COVID happens, bang, it broke supply chain. And now you've got all the McKinsey, Gartner, Hackett Group, Forrester, Big Four, KPMG, Deloitte, PW. All of these companies are saying the same thing. Supply chain professionals are looking to invest in relationship-driven resilience because that's what's been missing. It's not all about the numbers anymore. And in a recession, when you've got recession economics, business drops, which means revenue drops. And if you're dependent on that pre-baked margin of 10 or 15%, that's your revenue, your profit diminishing. And if you're not growing, you're diminishing. There's no static.
Yeah.
And so the statement was, well, if we know that this is happening and we know revenue is diminishing, the other thing we know is that our value targets will never diminish. They will only ever go up. That's like inflation. So we need to find another way to meet those value targets. So how do we do that? We need to look at the relationship. We need to extract the gold from the relationship. We need to collaborate with our suppliers. And suppliers are generally very good at collaborating because they do it with many customers. And this is where you've got different changes in attitude. You've got customers that are striving to become customer of choice because they want to build relationships with these suppliers that want longevity, that will help them in these collaborative reciprocal relationships, because it's better for everybody. And one supplier that services two customers, once one customer says, give me another 10%, the other one says, let's collaborate, we're going to go. We're not there yet totally, but we're on our way there. It's a change in paradigm, this reciprocal relationship building, customer of choice. This has all been going on in the background anyway with COVID, big shock to the system 18 months ago, but that's actually been an exponential curving disruption in the background. It's been going on for a while. Yeah. McKinsey have already, and they're not the only ones, but they've released studies that show that in another 10 years from now, companies can expect to see half of their profits lost to disruption. We created Supplier. We built it to MVP through 19 to 20. We launched to production April 2020. We ran a series of product fit first of our customers, and we went from there. And the differentiator for us is essentially that we create structure within the relationship space. Think about the marketplace. You've got an $8.5 trillion market, B2B enterprise marketplace, with 20% of the suppliers making up 80% of the value. That's a $6.5 trillion market, where 25% of the value across all of those top tier suppliers is hemorrhaging over term because of a lack of relationship driven resilience, harnessing and exploiting that value. And so we work in that space. We help customers to structure their relationship space similarly to the way they would their contract. We break down the relationship into a structured environment called 4 pillars. That's our infrastructure. Okay. And there are a number of different things that take place within that space to drive process, to drive frictionless collaboration across the ecosystem, to drive value, to drive transparency. I'm going to stop talking now. I'm going to let you.
I just taking it in. So I've obviously had a little look, and we were just talking about the content in this space, and it's actually cool that you put images of your product on your website. Like, it's crazy how many tech companies I see who kind of put everything behind a sales email. So the only way you get to see the product is you have to go through one of their sales teams, and then obviously that starts the lead generating funnel. But it's cool to see that I kind of saw this. And it might be based off like the 4 pillars, sort of a grid format that kind of highlighted like different, I don't know if it's schools or different categories and elements like that of how you manage it. And it was cool to see. And one thing I just realized when I was talking, I've been pronouncing your company completely wrong. I was calling it Supplier. It's Supplier, right? That's what you just said.
Supplier, but you wouldn't be the first.
No, but that's cool. I always think that's it's a good way to stimulate conversation about the brand, certainly. And when you were talking and you were talking about bringing people here, well, I guess suppliers, buyers together to collaborate more. Mm-hmm. So like, if I go very basic here, I'm assuming this is a SaaS platform. Yes. And you just invite your suppliers into it, and then you start building out, I guess, a way to score the relationship through that platform.
It's probably one of the quickest platforms to implement that I've ever seen. Now, I would say that because
I'll let you off.
but it really is. I mean, there is. Look, it's B2B SaaS, as you say, enterprise SaaS. It requires zero customization, zero intrusive implementation, and it can very easily drive value the very same day you switch it on.
Yeah.
So it's turnkey. It's built to be turnkey. That's not to say that it's not built, because it is built as an open API pincushion. It will play nicely with all of the other platforms within the modern ecosystem, and it already does. Obviously, I mean, it's built. We plug and play with various other technologies at the moment already, but it's very easy to stand up, and it's incredibly easy to implement. And to start using. There is essentially there can be as little as one administrator on the system that adds in some global admins or some relationship owners, and these people come in and they build their teams, and they build their communities, and it's a cascading effect And you can there's a case study on the website from one of our customers, and they explain it really well, that it really is this cascading effect of naturally building this community, naturally building within the platform frictionlessly. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're up a pole or down a hole or in a factory on the other side of the planet. It's just instant access, and it's all about driving improvement now, because everything on the platform is live. We don't create reports, we create insights.
Yeah, that's cool. Because I don't know about you, what I found is everyone's obsessed about reports and like, let's take data from here and let's pull it into some other form and let's go somewhere, let's go into a meeting, let's discuss this data. Because I like just to like pull up the live actual data, the live, as you say, probably insights, say, this is what's going on right now. I'm not going to download this and make it sound better, because that's what I think of a report. I think people download information and kind of put a bit of a subjective spin to make it sound better, especially if it's their responsibility. I may be a bit cynical there, but I think very much, let's see what's actually going on.
Well, here's the thing about data. It's most valuable when it's live, and it ages very, very quickly. Everything that goes into the platform, all the data that it creates is live. And we use a set of algorithms behind the data to score it in terms of its quality and in terms of its timestamp, because it's got a shelf life data. So whenever something is added onto the platform within a project or a subcategory or whatever within the platform, it starts to age straight away. And sometimes it's aged, it's scored immediately in terms of its quality as well. And it's all about driving cadence in the engagement at a project level. And we use that's one of the components within the platform that drives workflow automation. We've included a lot of workflow automation to remove some of that kind of middle management activity to drive team activity, bearing in mind that a lot of the team activity now is remote, is distributed. It already was before COVID, now it's heavily distributed. And supply chain is anyway. Supply chain, is not in the same city. It's not in the same continent sometimes. But it's still going to be live. So we use our kind of our data aging and quality checks to actually drive cadence in their engagement for a start. And that's delivered through a set of kind of visuals. And it's also where workflow automation picks up and it drives the activity out to the supply chain, out to the community, wherever they are, depending on the cadence that's required, depending on the quality. There are a number of factors. It's all about being a non-passive platform and driving instant transformation of activity. So we use a number of tricks, a lot of smart tech behind the scenes to make that happen.
Yeah, that sounds cool. I was just, what I was just going to ask is like, how does this actually work with the supply chain? And I guess you kind of answered it there. You've built in decent workflows that automate, I guess, a lot of the, like, I don't know. I in terms of what I've experienced over the years is, procurement managers, supply chain managers, they do a lot of stuff that doesn't really add value, or stuff that can be automated via a workflow within a tech solution. And I guess, like, you're talking about this workflow element that reaches out to the supply chain. Is that just asking and I'm going to try and be as general as possible, because I imagine there's some very specific examples that could happen here. Is it just effectively just asking them to input some sort of data, and that's potentially baked into a contract? We kind of mentioned that, but this maybe goes a bit further, because rather than doing it once every quarterly review or something, maybe this allows for a bit more, like you say, real-time data capture, no spin on information, things like that.
As a matter of fact, it's all of the above. So you can look down into the contract and you can drive activity and contribution or requirements for around contribution. You can aim those down at the contract, or you can aim them up into the relationship. So you can do that in terms of collaborative contribution within any of the projects and subcategories. You can also create or assign from an extremely kind of comprehensive KPI database within the platform or the KPI suite. But once you set those up, the system takes over as well. So it will run those KPIs. It would also serve up KPIs depending on the area of engagement that you're focusing on. So it will automatically serve up the correct KPIs that it thinks that you should be deploying. I mean,
That's a
that's
really
not
good
a
point. I was just thinking, like, whenever a lot of conversations I have currently and over the last few years are, when it comes to building out, how do we get this supplier to perform? We talk about the relationship, and then we go into this sort of mythical territory that's the contract can kind of say one thing, but how do we actually track it? How do we manage it? Or actually, a lot of the time, I've seen contracts that have poor key performance indicators, poor service level agreements, because they've not really been geared up for the actual agreement. It's kind of just like the business kind of has a pot of 5 different SLAs, and they're trying to fit it to everything. And it sounds like your tool just looks at what you're trying to achieve and kind of suggests this to you. Is that how is my understanding right?
That's correct. That's correct.
Wow.
And then the creation suite, it's called the creation suite, the KPI creation suite. It's very, very comprehensive and is extremely configurable for any type of KPI. So it doesn't matter about the environment that you're applying it, that you want to deploy in. There's something in there that you can create specific to your requirements. And once you've done that, the system, as I said, will take over. It will drive. It does all the kind of reminder stuff as well. So when KPIs, this isn't another thing, when KPIs expire, in fact, it's not just the KPIs. This applies to any central platform where the platform creates a lot of data. Maybe it stands up KPIs and creates some really good insights. But that data is only as good, even if it's live, as the activity level of those using it. In other words, how often they log in and use it.
Yeah, that was going to be a question actually. Like, how do you? Some suppliers are adverse to using, say, a third-party platform to drive their interaction. So maybe you can touch on that here.
But so that's something we've again addressed with our workflow automations, because we knew that the statement is that a platform, and regarding the ROI statement about any kind of central platform with data being created within it that then waits for people to log in and utilize it, you then have to take that ROI statement and cut it in half.
Yes,
which is quite a scary thing to do. But the rationale behind that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Because people will not necessarily log in and do stuff. So workflow automation takes care of that. We have a set of algorithms that check all of the data on a weekly basis, and we push out the data to the stakeholders across the community. So not just client side, but supplier side as well. So there's no getting away from the fact that you do need people to do something. You do. This isn't about we'll do everything for you.
Yeah.
Sit at home. This is a way of helping you by saying, well, you don't have to log in and look for everything, look for your project. We will look for everything that is urgent, that's about to go red, or that is expired, or that needs something specific done, and we will push that out at your inbox. It doesn't need to be inbox, but people are using email at the moment predominantly. We don't have to push things out. Well, yeah, but there is some change happening there as well, isn't there? But in this space, it's still on email.
Yeah.
So we push the calls to action out to the community, and all they have to do is literally click a link. It takes them straight to the activity, whether it be a project or whatever it happens to be. We're not sitting there as a passive platform anymore.
I get that.
We act very proactively, and we push the activity out to the community wherever they happen to be.
Yeah, that's cool. And I can tell that just from this conversation we've had, that you've really thought about that whole user experience from both sides. And I like that reference to community, right? Because it kind of makes, it's not just good marketing, is it? It's like it's the foundation, I guess, of this whole concept of working together. You have a community that might include the internal business and then all of your supply chain. It makes sense. And I'm very conscious of time here, Sheldon. I know that you've got to run off to another meeting, and I just kind of wanted to give you an opportunity here to talk about anything that you wanted to share about the platform, where anyone can, and I know anyone can find you on LinkedIn. We were just talking about this. You're so heavily involved in everything, so people can find you on LinkedIn. They can message you there, and I'm pretty sure that you'll be calling them and chatting to them and giving them a lot of information. But like, I want to give you the opportunity here to say anything else about the platform that maybe you think it's kind of cool that I wouldn't know as an outsider here.
Yes, I am quite prolific on LinkedIn. quite active. I'm also very heavily involved across all the different parts of the organization still. We've got a great leadership team. We've got great development. We've got some great people involved in Supplier. I still find myself getting heavily involved in the different areas, perhaps too much so, but I love it. I'm very passionate about Supplier. It's been a labor of love, extension of me as a relationship person. It's very much a collaborative relationship platform inherently, because that comes from me.
Yeah.
Because something I passionately believe in is the relationships are the core enablers of everything. They just are.
Definitely. I can tell you're good at it because you're a good talker, and I mean that in a really good way. Like when we spoke, I can't remember, it was a while ago, wasn't it? A couple months ago on the phone, and I think we spoke for like probably 30-40 minutes, and it was and sometimes I'm a bit more introverted, so sometimes it's good to have someone like you on the other end of the phone or opposite me, and it was just easy talking to you, and it kind of sounds like you've taken that to your to Supplier as your platform.
Well, as I say, it's inherent. It's natural, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's just flowed. It's just flowed. So you mentioned earlier on the kind of aesthetics, the screenshots of Supplier. So I mean, that's something that's really been very important to me as a user of technology. And having been so for many years, I didn't want to just take spreadsheets and put them online.
And that is a common approach I seem to see in this space.
It is. And I didn't want to, and that's more, I should say, than just aesthetically kind of, making them look nice. I wanted to transform the way we do things as well. And there's a lot of that in there. It really, really is. But just on the aesthetics, the usability and the look and the interest of the screens, I think it's really important. Because if this is a relationship platform, it's almost counterintuitive to make it look like spreadsheets, because it's a relationship platform.
I agree completely.
We've introduced color into the platform. It's very, very, very easy and versatile to operate and function. There's a fantastic R&D pipeline coming through as well. There's lots of deployment going on. The future's really bright for Supplier. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, no, you should be. And I think, when I talk to people about technology, whether it's supply chain technology, contract technology, I always say, and it's typically to people who are slightly older than I am, and I'm like, millennials have kind of grown up with non-technology, and then we got this technology, and we're like, wow, this is awesome. We got Gen Z coming through that. I mean, like, you see them out on the streets, they walk around just like this with their phone, and it's glued to their face. And I think,
have you looked at Supplier on the phone? Have you looked at the screenshots? So look, the point of Supplier, sorry to jump in, but on that, the point of Supplier is that it is instant. It's all about wherever you are, whether you're up a pole or down a hole, as I said, a factory somewhere. It's about getting to the data now, straight away, and not just to view it, but to contribute to it, to fix something, to improve something. A lot of the stuff that we're working on now, especially around sustainability and driving the agenda, you don't want to wrap some of this really important stuff around a legacy governance process, with a monthly cycle or a quarterly cycle, because you just hemorrhaging value that way. And so, when you look at what we've built, it's built for mobile. It really is. It's built for being on the move as well. So
that's even better, because my point pretty much was that we use our phones all the time, and we're used to using cool stuff, like even LinkedIn as an app. We spoken about LinkedIn. LinkedIn's pretty clean on your phone. Instagram, Facebook's a bit rubbish now. It's a little bit clunkier, but like, we're very used to all of these tools becoming very clean, very interesting, and they suck in your attention. That's kind of how they're designed, isn't it? Bright colors, notifications, it gets you. And if you can replicate that with something like this, I'm assuming people are just going to use it because that's what we're used to. So it sounds cool to me, Sheldon.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to say, I know that I'm very conscious of time. It's been a pleasure having you on here. I'll include some links in the show notes so people can come find you. Maybe we'll catch up via email, and I'll include all the relevant stuff there. And it's been great having you on here, Sheldon.
Dan, I appreciate it. Really appreciate it. It's been great.